This video is sponsored in part by Omaze. My name really is Mr. Beat, and I absolutely love music. I rarely make it through a day without listening to some of my favorite sick beats. I even have a rare condition called involuntary beatbox syndrome. See? But it's not just me. Around half of you watching this video right now love music so much that you literally get the chills when listening to some songs. Your heart rate increases, your pupils dilate, your body temperature increases. You may even, dare I say, dance. Simply put, you get that dopamine hit that makes the experience of listening to music similar to taking a drug. But even if you're the other half watching this right now who don't get the chills listening to music, it doesn't mean you don't like music. In fact, various studies have shown that a majority of humans regularly listen to music. Hey, I love music, but can you please turn that down? Thank you. Anyway, as I said earlier, I'm Mr. Beat, so how about American presidents? Yep, in this video we're going to look at the music habits of every single president in American history. More importantly, we'll try to learn their favorite type of music, and maybe even their favorite song or band, although much of that information apparently is classified. And we'll see if they perform music themselves. Did they enjoy singing? Did they play a musical instrument? And we shall once again go in chronological order, so that means first up is Georgi Washington. George Washington. Washington loved music. He once wrote, quote, "Nothing is more agreeable and ornamental than good music." He loved to dance, and he loved ballads. His favorite song was probably The Derby Ram.
Passed by the biggest ram, sir, that ever was fed on a.
And there are multiple accounts of him singing it to folks. John Adams. I couldn't find any evidence that Adams liked music. However, his son dug music. More on that in a bit. Thomas Jefferson. Oh, Jefferson loved music, once saying that music, quote, "is the favorite passion of my soul, and fortune has cast my lot in a country where it is in a state of deplorable barbarism." It's well known that he was pretty good at the violin, playing it throughout most of his life. During his college days, he practiced the violin 3 hours a day, and he regularly performed at small gatherings. He also played the cello and clavichord. Apparently, Jefferson also loved to sing, and often sang as he traveled. As you may already know, Jefferson donated his personal library to start the Library of Congress. Well, much of that library had music books. He had a diverse taste in music. While he loved Mozart, Haydn, Vivaldi, and Handel, his favorite composer was Arcangelo Corelli. That said, he also dug American folk songs. James Madison. There is no evidence that Madison loved music, despite him owning this cool crystal flute that was saved from the White House before the British burnt it to the ground during the War of 1812. James Monroe. Yeah, there's also no evidence that Monroe loved music either. He owned pianos, but there's no evidence he ever played any of them. John Quincy Adams. Though his father wasn't big into music, the younger Adams was definitely into it. And yes, he actually played the flute. In fact, he was known to participate in often drunken late-night jam sessions with his buddies in college, and I just love this quote by him. Quote, "I am extremely fond of music, and by dint of great pains have learnt to blow very badly the flute. I console myself with the idea of being an American, and therefore not susceptible of great musical powers." Under his presidency, "Hail to the Chief" was played for the very first time. He even wrote his own songs, although I couldn't find out specifically what his favorite song was, nor even what his favorite type of music was. Andrew Jackson. Jackson dug folk music quite a bit. He played the guitar. He even played banjo because of course he did. One of his favorite songs was Auld Lang Syne, which he regularly requested to be performed at parties he hosted. Martin Van Buren. I couldn't find any evidence that Van Buren was into music. He did own a piano, though. William Henry Harrison. Well, I couldn't find any evidence that Harrison was into music either. However, he also owned a piano, apparently. I guess pianos are just furniture to some folks. Okay, here we go. Now we're talking. John Tyler. Like Jefferson before him, Tyler was a violinist, and a darn good one. His dad taught him how to play. He stopped playing after going into politics, though, but after leaving politics, he returned to it, regularly playing duets with his wife Julia, who was a guitarist. Tyler also loved going to musicals. James Polk. No evidence Polk enjoyed music. That's not saying he didn't, but it just doesn't appear to be the case. He also never tried playing any musical instruments, although he also owned a piano. Zachary Taylor. No evidence Taylor enjoyed music, but go ahead and Google Zachary Taylor's favorite song. The first search result is great. Millard Fillmore. Now, Fillmore did appear to dig music. When he was in the White House, he brought 3 pianos with him, and he invited many musicians there to perform for him. Franklin Pierce owned a piano, but didn't dare play it, and probably not that much into music either. Okay, from now on, let's just go ahead and assume that every future president owned a piano, because they pretty much all did, whether they actually played it or not. James Buchanan. There is evidence Buchanan did enjoy music, for he regularly invited musicians to the White House. In 1860, Buchanan invited the pianist Thomas Green Bethune, commonly known as Blind Tom, since he was really blind, yet amazing at the piano, to perform at the White House. He was the first African-American artist to perform there. Abraham Lincoln. Even though he never played a musical instrument, Lincoln loved music. He especially loved going to operas, and his favorite was Martha by Friedrich von Flotow. He also regularly invited musicians into his home. For Lincoln, music was therapy, and he often teared up listening to it. Andrew Johnson. There is no evidence that Johnson enjoyed music. In fact, he absolutely hated having fun, period. Just kidding. Ulysses Grant. Grant once said, quote, "I only know 2 tunes. One of them is Yankee Doodle and the other isn't." Grant was tone deaf, meaning he was unable to recognize differences of musical pitch accurately. Likely due to this, Grant didn't like music much at all. It was basically noise to him. Rutherford Hayes. Well, it's a bit hard to tell, but I'd say Hayes did like music, or at least he loved his wife Lucy enough to put up with it. Lucy was a wonderful singer and guitarist, and she invited lots of musicians to perform at White House events, so Hayes seemed to dig gospel music. James Garfield. There is also no evidence that Garfield enjoyed music. Okay then. Chester Arthur. Although I couldn't verify this for sure, Arthur possibly played the banjo, and he also seemed to be a bit of a music snob, urging John Philip Sousa to not perform Hail to the Chief for him, but instead to come up with a more, quote, dignified song. So yeah, I think Arthur liked music. Grover Cleveland. Nope, he definitely wasn't into music that much. Benjamin Harrison. Well, it's also hard to tell with Harrison, as he did host musical events at the White House, but since there's no evidence he liked music, for the purposes of this video, we will assume he wasn't into it that much. What the heck is up with presidents in the late 1800s not really getting into music much? Well, I can tell you that's about to dramatically change in the 1900s, especially with the invention of recorded music. William McKinley. Yeah, McKinley dug music. He often invited the United States Marine Band and other musicians to the White House while he was president. He also enjoyed dancing if he wanted to. In fact, he could leave your friends behind. McKinley and his wife, Ida, introduced the American two-step dance to the White House at a Valentine's Day party in 1901. Theodore Roosevelt. Yes, Roosevelt dug music. His favorite song apparently was "There'll Be a Hot Time in the Old Town Tonight," which ended up being the theme song for his Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War. Roosevelt also liked to mess around with a harmonica. William Howard Taft. According to my research, Taft was the first president to bring a record player into the White House. He played all kinds of music on it, but his favorite record was La Bohème, an opera composed by Giacomo Puccini. Woodrow Wilson. Wilson loved music. He also played violin and sang growing up. In fact, in college, he was in the Glee Club. As he got older and more involved with politics, he apparently stopped playing the violin, but he never lost his passion for music. As president during World War I, he once said, quote, "Music now, more than ever before, is a national need." Wilson also regularly invited musicians to perform at the White House. Warren Harding. Harding likely played more musical instruments than any other president. He once told his friends, quote, "I played every instrument but the slide trombone and the E-flat cornet." Well, we don't know exactly how good he actually was at any of those instruments, but we do know he was in different bands growing up. He was a big brass instrument guy in particular, although he dabbled with woodwinds and percussion. When he was 19, one of his bands got third place in the Ohio State's Band Festival and won $200. Calvin Coolidge. Coolidge also messed around with a harmonica. However, I don't think he particularly dug going to concerts or listening to records much. Herbert Hoover. Hoover also invited many musicians to perform at the White House. Notably, he and his wife Lou were the first couple to invite a musician to play for a foreign head of state when they invited the harpist Mildred Dilling to perform for Praja-Hip-Hop, the King of Siam. Hoover's favorite songs were, no joke, March No. 1 of the Pomp and Circumstance Marches by Sir Edward Elgar. Yes, that's the one. Also, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And, wait for it, the Star-Spangled Banner. I'm gonna guess that you've heard those songs before. Franklin Roosevelt. Just like Wilson, Roosevelt was in the Glee Club in college. He also played the piano and organ a bit. His favorite song was Home on the Range, originally written by Dr. Brewster Higley. That said, he also enjoyed the song Anchors Aweigh, the unofficial march song of the United States Navy, and the Yellow Rose of Texas. Indeed, FDR might have been the first president to really love country music. And don't forget his Federal Music Project, which was part of a New Deal program that employed musicians, conductors, and composers during the Great Depression. Harry Truman. Not only did Truman play the piano, he played piano well. As president, he always had a piano by his desk, and he rarely passed by a piano without sitting down to play a quick tune. Today you can hear some of his performances online. Here's a small sample. He also always had a radio by his desk and was the first president I found that actually listened to music on the radio. In terms of his music tastes, he was quite eclectic. He owned more than 680 records. He was actually kind of a music snob. In particular, Truman loved Johann Strauss waltzes and just about anything from George Gershwin and Claude Debussy. His favorite compositions included Chopin's Waltz in A-flat major, Opus 42, Mozart's Piano Sonata in A major, and Beethoven's Piano Concert No. 4 in G. As he got older, he talked trash about newer music, calling it, quote, modern noise, always preferring classical music over that modern nonsense, dang kids. Dwight Eisenhower. Well, it's pretty easy to find out what Eisenhower's favorite music was. He literally released an album called The President's Favorite Music. Last I checked, there was only one copy left of it available on Amazon. It features mostly classical and traditional stuff. Also, on the Eisenhower Library website, you can find a list prepared by Eisenhower's staff, and here it is. But yeah, there's a lot of classical music, folk music, gospel music, and even some Christmas music on there. Eisenhower was the first president to have a Broadway performance in the White House, and throughout his presidency, military band performances there became much more frequent. Oh yeah, and Eisenhower also played harmonica a bit. John F. Kennedy. Well, he took piano lessons as a kid, but Kennedy was more about listening to music. And similar to Truman, he had an eclectic taste. First of all, he loved jazz and brought the first jazz ensemble, the Paul Winter Sextet, to play in the White House on November 19th, 1962. Kennedy also hosted many classical concerts at the White House. His favorite thing to listen to often was Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun by Claude Debussy. JFK also really dug Irish music, especially anything with bagpipes. Today, the biggest music legacy associated with him is the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., which hosts all kinds of concerts by some of the most gifted artists from around the world. Lyndon Johnson. Johnson really enjoyed musicals like Oklahoma and Hello Dolly, which actually inspired one of his campaign songs, Hello Lyndon, by Ed Ames.
Hello, Lyndon.
He also dug country music and loved Roy Rogers, especially his version of the song Don't Fence Me In. But of all the presidents, LBJ was probably the best dancer. He absolutely loved dancing, and when he was on the dance floor, you'd better watch out. Richard Nixon. I mentioned how good Truman was at the piano. Well, Nixon was even better, but don't take my word for it. There's lots of footage of him playing the piano online. Here's a sample. Nixon also played the accordion, violin, clarinet, and saxophone. And don't be fooled by this picture he took with Elvis. Nixon preferred classical music over rock and roll. Specifically, he was a big fan of Tchaikovsky. He also dug Lawrence Welk and apparently Johnny Cash, inviting him to perform at the White House. Gerald Ford. I don't think Ford was the biggest fan of music, but his favorite type of music was jazz. That said, he did have rock stars like George Harrison and Peter Frampton visit the White House when he was president. Jimmy Carter. Many people don't know this, but Carter is the only president in American history to play the ukulele, although I'm not sure how good he has ever been at it. His favorite types of music include jazz, country, and southern rock. He was a big fan of Willie Nelson. When he ran for president and after he became president, he famously just hung out with rock and country stars. He became good friends with Greg Allman, for example. There's even a documentary that goes into all this called Jimmy Carter, Rock and Roll President.
I think music is the best proof that people have one thing in common no matter where they live, no matter what the language they speak.
Despite these rock and country star connections, the only song that he has mentioned as a standout favorite over the years is the Navy hymn, Eternal Father Strong to Save. Ronald Reagan. I also don't think Reagan was the biggest fan of music, but he did have a favorite song, Nancy with the Laughing Face by Jimmy Van Heusen and Phil Silvers. The most famous version of it is by Frank Sinatra. He also seemed to have a soft spot for the Beach Boys and invited them to play at the White House. After Reagan left the presidency, he apparently picked up the harmonica. George H.W. Bush. Bush Sr. was a legit country music fan, once saying, quote, "Country music gives us a window on the real world, and when I want to feel a certain surge of patriotism, or turn nostalgic, or even when I need a little free advice about Saddam Hussein, I turn to country music." He even attended the Country Music Awards in 1991. Bill Clinton. It's well known that Clinton is good at the saxophone. As a presidential candidate in 1992, he won the audience over by playing Heartbreak Hotel on sax with the Arsenio Hall Show Band. In fact, you could say the performance was a turning point in his campaign as he surpassed his opponent, the aforementioned George H.W. Bush, in the polls right after it. Similar to Jimmy Carter, Clinton has hung out with several rock stars over the years, from Bono from U2 to David freaking Bowie. Here are Clinton's 20 favorite songs of all time. It's a pretty eclectic list, although Clinton has always been the most fond of rock and roll from the 1950s and 1960s. He invited so many rock stars to the White House as president. Big names. Huge. I mean, look at this list. He once joked that one of the nicest things about being president was that nearly any musician could come perform for him. George W. Bush. Like his dad, Bush Jr. loves country music, but more newer stuff, obviously. He digs George Jones, Alan Jackson, and Kenny Chesney. His likely two favorite songs, though, are not country: Centerfield by John Fogerty and Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison. Barack Obama. Obama can sing. Here is some evidence of that. And we know more about Obama's favorite music than any other president in American history. It helps that he has released several playlists of his favorite songs. Here are some tweets announcing them. His playlists are quite eclectic, featuring hip-hop to reggaeton, to R&B, to country, to even indie rock. Oh, and these playlists are still widely available online. Regarding one specific band or artist, well, I couldn't find one he liked the most. He just likes them all. Donald Trump. While it's well known that Trump has been friends with several musicians over the years, including lately Kid Rock, it's less clear how passionate he is about music. He did tell Rolling Stone magazine he digs classic rock, including the Rolling Stones and Aerosmith.
Aerosmith is terrific. Steven Tyler, that whole group is just a terrific group.
He also reportedly likes Eminem. He once said that Is That All There Is, a song made famous by Peggy Lee in 1969, was his favorite song. Notably, Trump also signed the Music Modernization Act, which helps musicians and songwriters get paid more for their music from streaming platforms. Joe Biden. Believe it or not, Joe Biden and his wife Jill also once released a playlist. It wasn't as eclectic as Obama's, but still a diverse list nonetheless. He mostly likes music from the 1960s and 1970s, but as also mentioned, he likes newer artists like Coldplay and Lady Gaga. That all said, apparently his favorite band of all time is one you maybe haven't heard of, The Chieftains, a traditional Irish folk band that has been around since the 1960s. He once told people People magazine he would sing their songs if he, quote, had any musical talent. He announced his favorite song in his inaugural address, of all places. It's American Anthem by Gene Shear. So that's it. That's the lowdown of every American president's musical leanings. Overall, there's evidence that 29 presidents seem to enjoy music, at least to a certain degree, and 16 presidents seemed more indifferent or even disliked music. Oh, and as some of you already know, I'm a musician myself, and I've actually written and recorded songs about every single president in American history, excluding Joe Biden, since he's still currently in office. You can check out all of them by checking out the link in the description of this video. Oh no, sorry about that. Let's go ahead and end this video before... This video is sponsored in part by Omaze. Omaze launched with a mission to transform typical charitable giving. Omaze gives you the chance to dream big and win one-in-a-lifetime prizes, all while helping nonprofits make the world a better place. This sustainable approach to fundraising means that nonprofits can spend less resources raising funds and instead focus on serving the needs of their communities. To date, Omaze has raised over $150 million for charity, with a goal to raise over $1 billion in a single year. This month, Omaze is giving you the chance to win $100,000 in cash. Dang, $100,000? If I won $100,000, I could finally pay off my student loans. Anyway, by entering, you can support Together We Rise, an organization dedicated to transforming the way children navigate the foster care system in the United States. To be included in the $100,000 draw, you must enter by May 31st by going to omaze.com/MrBeat. So not only could you win $100,000, but you're also supporting a great cause. Thank you again to Omaze for sponsoring this video. So what's your favorite type of music? Let me know in the comments below. Also remember that I have another channel that focuses a lot on music history called The Beat Goes On, so feel free to check that out as well. And now it's time for my monthly shout outs to every Patreon supporter who donates at least $15 or more each month to my channel. Starting with my biggest donors, I've got Bill Dowd, Adam Lucky, Alicia Solberg, Andrew B., Anthony Beckett, Asif Ismail, Austin Ciros, Corey Ryman, Dr. Paul J. Lilly, Empty Machine, Matt Standish, Neo R14, Nick Everett, Noah Hoff, Osbers Gaming, Pat Iapicca, Sean Connett, Adam Christians, Alex Gurrell, Andrew Snyder, Brian Layton, Gail Gerard, Grant Hughes, Ian Driscoll, Elon Capone, Jack L., Jacob Birnbaum, Joe Serrano Lozada, John Johnson, Kit Walker, Naderade, Nelson Guzman, Omar Arizona, Samuel Striz, Society's Basement, Stacy, Steve Bryan, Thomas Oppenheim, Waterfort, and Zachary F. Parker. Thank you to all my Patreon supporters, and thank you for watching.